Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're back with another SEC team preview here. We've got the Arkansas Razorbacks. Before we do dive in, if you have been enjoying our off-season content, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We do appreciate everyone's support. But diving in here, we've got Arkansas, as I said, second year of John Calipari. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, Cody, what strengths do you see on the offensive side?
Yeah, I went more in the route of they improved in two really key areas. And, it's just perimeter shooting and then getting on the offensive glass. I think these are two really important aspects of Coach Cal offenses. And his teams typically always get on the offensive glass, but, they kind of got away from that aspect these past couple of years. Coach Cal teams were top 100 in offensive rebound rate every year from 2008 to 2023. But the last two seasons, they've been outside of the top 150, including 230th last season, which it just really hindered this offense that finished I think they were like 64th in Torvik. Yeah, 64th overall in Torvik, which was among the worst offenses he's had since, since the Torvik era began. And, the new Arkansas front court, I think, is going to allow Cal's team to get back to a similar strength. And a guy like Malik Ewan, who's coming from Florida State with a 13.7% offensive rebound rate. Nick Pringle as the backup 5 with a 9.3% offensive rebound rate last year. And Trevor Brazil at the 4 with an 8.5% offensive rebound rate. And then you have some depth pieces in Paulo Semedo and Elmir Zafic to kind of round out the group. Not really sure what those roles are going to look like from the international guys, but maybe they come in and play a role more for defensive purposes, but they should be able to get on the glass a little bit. And, Malik Ewan isn't just an offensive rebounder either. Like, he has a lot of skill in his game, and that's something that they were kind of missing last year, like a front court guy that they could play through. Like, their rim offense was pretty poor. Their ability to get to the rim compared to past Cal teams was pretty rough, but Malik Ewan's going to be able to, provide value as a roll man and a little bit in the post up. And, he can create and drive downhill a little bit from the top of the key. Like, he has a nice versatile skill set for a 5, and it's going to make this offense certainly is going to be better than it was last season. I feel pretty confident in saying that. And, this team, they're, like I mentioned, they're also going to shoot it well. Arkansas was 230th in 3-point percentage on the 244th 3-point attempt rate in the country. So it was just a really poor perimeter offense that just didn't really have the ability to knock it down, and they didn't want to shoot it. And, I can almost assure you they improved here as well. The additions of, the 5 stars, Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, and then you're going to get more consistent minutes from Carter Knox at the 3. I think is going to uplift the perimeter group that really struggled last year. And, Flan missed a large part of last year, and now he's at Florida. Like, he would have helped in this regard, but DJ Wagner had too much responsibility on this team, and obviously he's still here, but I do think he's going to take a little bit of a backseat in the creation aspect for guys like Thomas and Acuff. So I do think it's a very improved team in two aspects, and two really important aspects to any offense. You want to make perimeter shots at a high level, and when you don't make them, you want to create second chances. It's always so important in college basketball for teams to win the extras, and I think Coach Cal's roster is a little bit better shaped to do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the offensive glass is going to be really important. The additions they made clearly were in part emphasizing that, right? Like you said, 230th in offensive rebound rate last year. They should be much improved in that area. One other area I think that they could be solid, and this is just a point about like a guy like Malik Ewan. He runs the floor really well for a 6'10" guy. I think their offensive transition attack could be solid as well. You've got guards, a couple freshmen, and then you mentioned like Wagner, Carter Knox, that can really kind of push the pace. And I think that they'll play a little bit of an up-tempo style. And I think they'll be able to do that with their big men who move pretty well, can get up and down the floor at a pretty fast rate. So I think that'll certainly help. But looking at weaknesses on this side of the ball, for me, I think like one area of concern, I guess, more than just a weakness would be, their turnover rate, taking care of the basketball. We saw last year, DJ Wagner, um, like 19% turnover rate. They were 127th nationally in turnover rate. I think, like you mentioned, he's going to have some pressure removed from him with guys like Acuff and Thomas coming in. But, you're bringing in two freshmen, to kind of be those either primary or secondary ball handlers alongside DJ Wagner, which, I think always kind of brings potential for turnover issues, at least early on in a league like the SEC with younger guards that are going to be facing, more physical pressure defenses in the SEC. I think that's more just a forecast that this could be an area of concern, especially where it wasn't necessarily a strength of theirs last season. And then one other area I wanted to mention for weaknesses here was just kind of like overall shot selection. Looking at, again, DJ Wagner last year, he likes to, I felt like at times, take a lot of like tough twos, whether that's like in the mid range or even at the rim, some tougher twos at the rim. And then like watching, obviously it's hard to get a feel. You look at a guy like Acuff and Malik Thomas. Granted, it's like high school AAU stuff, but sometimes it seems like they do settle for more of those like mid-range contested shots. So again, more of just a forecast than anything. But I think like there could be some growing pains with overall like shot selection of this offense in particular, because you've got, you look at Wagner, he in the perimeter group, he's really the only one that played like consistent minutes other than like Knox as the season went on. He played about 60% of the minutes, but Acuff and Thomas, obviously first year at the college level. Billy Richmond only played like 40% of minutes last year. You're looking at, a different, just a group that sometimes may take some tougher shots. So, for me, that's definitely an area of overall concern.
Yeah, I had turnover rate jotted down as well. Like, there's just a lot of guys. When you look at their past turnover rates, they've been pretty poor there. Like nobody inside of 15% on for returners or guys that are like have played college basketball minutes before. And it's a good point about Thomas and Acuff, particularly Malik Thomas. He'll fire away. He's going to be very volatile. He's going to be not a shot chucker, because I think any shot that he takes can go in. He's a super talented shot maker, and so he's got a really pure release. But he will take some bad ones, and I think Acuff can get to the rim more often than he has shown. Yes, he has settled a little bit. I do think he'll be a guy that can bring some rim efficiency. Well, definitely a little bit more than what Boogie Flan brought to the table. He really struggled around the rim, so I do think Acuff can be that guy. And like you mentioned about the transition offense, like typically a staple for Coach Cal. He always loves to run. It's been the half court offense lately that's kind of been the issue. And I guess that's like my main weakness is like, can Coach Cal elevate an offense that doesn't have elite traits? Like, as much as they improved on the glass and as a shooting team, I don't necessarily think they're high level in either area. Like, they're going to be good, but if they can't be an elite shooting team or offensive rebound team, like I can't really consider this offense among the elites. Like, I can see them being in that 20 to 25 area in adjusted offense, but overall, like, I just don't view Cal or the rest of this coaching staff as like floor raisers on the offensive end. And I just think the offense in the half court is just a little bit outdated. I just think maybe Cal tries to do a little bit too much with his off ball actions. It's actions that were run 10 to 15 years ago. He's kind of just kept like he loves floppy action. That's one of his favorite actions within an offense. Like, he did it a lot for Davis last year, and you don't really see that much of that anymore. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Like, if this offense isn't going to light it up from three like that Kentucky offense did 2 years ago, like that was a real driver. It was like Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham, and Antonio Reeves just could make any shot that they took, and it made Kentucky one of the best offenses in the country. I don't see it really going that route with Arkansas, although they are improved.
Yeah, no, I think so for sure. Um, Looking at the defensive side of the ball now, what strengths do you see on this side?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an athletic group once again, and this is typically the main driver for Cal defenses. He just gets the personnel, and he always just you know can defend in multiple ways. Always has rim protection up front. I think he has that again. You know, since 2008, Cal defenses have been top 50 in effective field goal percentage defense in all but 2 seasons, and those 2 seasons were the last 2 seasons. So maybe they're not going to be as elite as they have been in past seasons. But I do think, or sorry, 2023 and 24. Last season they were 36th. Yeah, they were 36th, and then they were 17th in adjusted defense. So I do think this defense looks fairly similar to last year. So I think this is going to be a strength for them once again. Like a guy like Trevor Brazil playing the 4, I think was pretty key for last year's Arkansas defense, as he allowed Cal to play 2 rim protectors at all times without sacrificing any point of attack defense. Like I think that's a strength of Brazil at the 4 compared to other 4s. Like he can guard in multiple scenarios, which is good. And he had a 5.7% block rate and 3.8 defensive box plus minus, which was among the best on the team. So bringing him back is obviously going to be a plus. Like Malik Ewan isn't like a fantastic rim protector by any means. It might be a downgrade from a guy like Jonas Adu or Big Z, but I think his physical presence down low, I think, will be needed. Like he had a 20% defensive rebound rate, and then a guy coming off the bench behind him, and Nick Pringle is a more physical presence that can do a solid job on the defensive glass. Because this is an area that Arkansas struggled last year. They weren't that great on the defensive glass, so I think those two can help uplift that area.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main points that I had put down was improved defensive rebounding, without a doubt. I mean, you're bringing in a guy like 90th last year on the defensive glass, and now this year you're bringing in Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan, and you have Brazil back. All like over 20% defensive rebound rate guys. They should be much improved here. But like you did mention, Malik Ewan, I do have some concerns with him as an overall like rim protector. I think Nick Pringle is okay. Like last year, he really didn't protect the rim all that well at 1.9%. So ultimately, like this was an area of overall concern. I think Brazil can be really good as a rim protector for them. But at the 5 spot anyway, I just have some concerns with the rim protection between Ewan and Pringle. I think Pringle is a better rim protector than he showed last year. But I don't know as if they're like fantastic. Thankfully, like they are going to be a better defensive rebounding group, as I said. Another weakness of this defense is, and this is pretty much the same thing for every Coach Cal defense, other than like 2 years, 3 years, his 2 years at Memphis, and then the team that made the Final Four in 2015, and that's their turnover forcing defense. It's just not really something that is emphasized, right? I mean, they're pretty much in between like 160 and 270 every year in turnover rate defense. And I kind of worry about this perimeter group, like DJ Wagner, not really a good defender, doesn't really create many plays. Carter Knox is okay on this end. Then you bring in like Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas, who are, especially like Malik Thomas, I think is more of like an offensive minded, thinner framed guy that I have some worries about just physically on the defensive end. So, overall, I think my concerns come on this end of the floor. And then the last thing would be just the wing depth, right? I mean, you've got Wagner, Acuff, and Thomas at the guard spot, all, in that 6'3", 6'1", 6'3". I think maybe they can guard up. But like I mentioned, I have concerns with Thomas and his physicality. even though he is 6'3", which leaves like Carter Knox and like Richmond, at the 3-4, like 2-3-4 to kind of help guard there. And behind that, like they're as we talked about, you've got Brazil, Ewan, and Pringle up front, all at 6'10". Then you mentioned Semedo, at 7'1". He's also going to be in the front court. So the wing depth on this roster, I'm not overly thrilled about on the defensive end.
Yeah. The turnover rate stuff is fair. And like, I think it obviously makes sense because they're always such a good effective field goal percentage defense that they don't really have to force any turnovers, which is nice. And I think they have this quality to an extent. Yeah, the rim protection stuff is a little bit worse, which I think in turn makes their effective field goal percentage worse as well. I kind of like this perimeter group. I think, they look smaller when you look at like a depth chart, obviously Wagner's not great, but I think he's a fine lateral mover at 6'4". Like I think he's closer to average, probably the worst defender in this group. But you have, and Malik Thomas, like 6'4", but he's got a +4 wingspan. I think his wingspan's like 6'8". So I think there's a chance for him to be solid, at least from a playmaking perspective. Maybe he struggles with size, but I do like Acuff as a defender, and Billy Richmond's a pretty awesome defender, honestly. It's the offensive side of the ball that kind of limits him, and it just depends on what Cal really wants to do there. I think he likes Knox a lot, and Knox is obviously a downgrade as a defender, but you could throw Billy Richmond in there, and he's really solid on this end. But yeah, overall, it's just, the lack, like you mentioned, the rim protection, and if it's not as elite as, Adu and Big Z's rim protection is last year, and they're not going to force as many turnovers, I do think this is a defense that got worse, and I think it'll be a fraction worse than 17th. I could see them being like 25th on offense and defense this season if you're looking at an adjusted efficiency number, just because there's not any like real playmaking traits, and the rim protection's a little bit lacking.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I definitely like Acuff as a defender. I think he has a lot of he has the most upside to me of like at least between him and Malik Thomas, and above Wagner, of course, in my eyes. But looking now at team MVP and team X Factor, who'd you go with here?
Yeah, I went with Darius Acuff as my MVP. I think he's going to have to do a lot in this half-court offense, particularly in the pick and roll. I think he's a really smart decision maker in pick and roll, and I think he's a more advanced passer than a lot of guys coming into college. And there's 3-level scoring qualities. Obviously, I think he settles a little bit too much, and the perimeter jumper isn't like so elite that he's able to settle all that often. So like there could be some scoring efficiency concerns, but for what he has to bring to the table for this half-court offense, I think he is the MVP. I was between him and Malik Ewan. I think Ewan brings a lot to the front court and then to the post offense, but ultimately I went with Acuff, who's going to be doing a lot of the creating. And the X Factor, I went with Carter Knox. I feel like this is everyone's X Factor on this team, but he really showed flashes at the end of last season as a shooter, as a guy that can really attack closeouts and score at the rim. Like that's what I'm most impressed with his game, is like his first step is very explosive, and he's able to score over the top of really any front court player as well. So I was rather impressed with that, and solid defender. But I am very intrigued by his secondary qualities. So he's definitely a swing piece for me.
Yeah. I actually went with Carter Knox as my MVP. Maybe a little bit more bold, but I think like his ability on the offensive end, kind of like the growth we saw over the course of last season, his ability to make shots, but also, he made some really explosive plays in that NCAA tournament. I think he just kind of has the qualities for a pretty big second year leap, which I'll get to, in my bold prediction. But, I think he's got something, right? 46% from the field last year, 35% from three, playing 24 minutes a game now this year. I think like the one thing I kind of hammered home in the SEC transfer portal reviews when we were talking about Arkansas was like, I felt like last year was really difficult because they brought in it was atypical of Cal where he had transfers coming in uh, plus freshmen at the same position, and I felt like you Carter Knox didn't really get the same sort of runway that a typical Cal freshman that's a 5-star truly gets because they had like a guy like John L. Davis on the wing. Um, it was a little bit more difficult. It was more crowded. Now I think he's got a lot of just runway, like I said, opportunity to grow on the offensive end of the floor, and I kind of expect him to blossom into that type of player for Coach Cal. And my X factor, I went with Darius Acuff, like you mentioned. I think he's going to be really important on both ends of the floor in pick and roll, kind of in their transition game. Um, he's kind of got some craft to his game, I think, particularly getting to the rim. So I think he's going to be just as important to this team as well.
Yeah, that's fair. I wasn't really expecting the Carter Knox MVP. I mean, I know Arkansas fans are high on him, but you might be a little bit higher on him than some Arkansas fans out there. I'm sure they'll love to hear that. And
Yeah.
I did really like what I saw. It's just I think just the on ball creation just is a fraction behind some of the guys on this roster, like Acuff and Thomas are going to be handling a lot of that, and then even through the front court. So, but I think what he brings to the table as a secondary player is going to be awesome. And there's probably there's more room for him to be a scorer. Average 8 points per game last year. There's obviously room for more.
Yeah, no, I think so. But ceiling and floor for this team, I think Torvik has them 4th. Where do you see this Arkansas team falling?
Yeah, and I think that's within the realm of possibility. I think they can finish top 3 in this league with the improved offense, and obviously it's going to be a solid defense, like we mentioned. The roster is always pretty solid under Coach Cal, so I think they can finish top 3 and be like a 2 or 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Their floor, I think, it's not low, but I still think they make the tournament regardless. But I do think they could finish like 9th in the SEC. Like obviously this is a really good league. There's a lot of good teams in that second tier, and they could fall back there a little bit. I still think at their floor, I think they're a 10 seed just because of the improved offense.
Yeah. For me, I said they could finish as high as 2nd in this league. Not really sure if they're true like contenders to win it. But we'll see. And then at their floor, I said they could finish 7th. And we'll talk kind of more in depth about this, I think, as we get into like our SEC preseason award show at the end of our previews. But I do think the SEC is a little less deep this year, and I think this team has a little bit of a safer floor just based on talent alone. And the shooting ability, as you mentioned, being improved, being better on the glass. I think it puts this team in a pretty good spot to finish kind of in that more narrow range of like 2nd to 7th in my eyes. But in terms of bold prediction, I went, as I alluded to already, I went with a Carter Knox stat. I said he almost doubles his scoring output. He averages 15 plus a game this year.
It's pretty bold, I think. I do think Arkansas fans think that's a possibility too. I think he's around 12 and a half to 13, and I think he's still going to be a really good impact at that number. Like maybe he shoots it. He shot 35% from 3 last year on only 3 attempts per game. There's probably more room for more volume and efficiency. So, I mean, I could see him. He's definitely a breakout candidate. But my bold prediction was I think Darius Acuff can average 5 assists per game this year. I think he's going to have a very large role, and I'm very high on his passing, like I mentioned. So in a faster paced offense, I think that's a real possibility.
Yeah, no, I like Acuff, as I've alluded to, but we'll see what happens. I mean, this team should be fun to watch. A lot of talent as usual for Coach Cal teams, and a lot of young, like freshman, sophomore talent. So we'll see what happens with the Arkansas Razorbacks, but we'll wrap things up. Thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.